Hello, Ying.
Hello.
Hi. So thank you for joining me. So just want to let you know that. Ah. So thank you for joining me. So just want to let you know that. Thank you for joining me. So just want to let you know. 1 second. Now I can resume. So with this session, basically, I want to record this session. I think it's very valuable session, and at the same time, also doing the Facebook live stream as well. And then afterward, we'll post it to YouTube.
Awesome.
And so before we start, I want to do a quick introduction because people would think that you are in real estate. What do we have anything to do with job hunting, job guidance, career advice, right? I do have to say absolutely not. It just is such a coincidence that a couple weeks ago, through the barbecue event with Garden Star Group, then I got to meet, my super luck, got to meet Ying, and after learning her, the experience, education, and work experience, and being, executive coach and everything, and I think that she has so much, valuable to offer to everybody, especially our newly graduate. Right now we're in a season, newly graduate, and the people who want to look into perhaps jump to different track. Very valuable advice, because right now I'm in real estate. Right now we have assisted so many like newly graduates coming to Manhattan or graduate from the NYU in Columbia. Not just them, the parents constantly call me, say, Anne, can you please help my kid? Can you help my kid? Especially during this remote working on Zoom, another company from last year cutting the opportunity to now actually grow. So I feel like, oh my God, like as I find the golden spotlight when I made King. So just want to just quick info that Ying is Cao Ying. It's a founder of the work in fintech, and also CEO and co-founder, executive coach of Light, YTT, and also she graduated from the Beijing University, Beijing, and then Yale University, all the Mingxiao. And I want to quickly just quote something I read from the LinkedIn that in talk about her journey, and this is word by word. It said, I left my Wall Street job and started my own company like in 2021. This decision doesn't come easy, but it has created so many possibilities that I have never imagined in my life and career. I am enjoying every minute of this new journey. Many people hate their job or do something or do things they don't feel excited about doing every day. I'm grateful for the last 20 plus years of self-discovery and coaching journey. And I'm grateful to myself who doesn't want to settle and live life on other people's terms, but in my own truth. It's great to wake up every day with a sense of purpose, work with people I love and admire, and create the reality I wanted for my own life. So I was really touching, and it's very inspiring for you to say that. So I just want to, I'm done with my intro, and this whole session is really about Ying, and like give what she has. And just a quick last month I did a session with Baruch College. Talking about, I was on the panelist talking about that how to achieve where you are in the business. But I think that was after when you are on career. But and then how do you prospect and grow from there? But now I want to, our today's session is focus on how to land the opportunity and gain the door. So okay, Ying, there you go.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Annie, for inviting me to come and talk about this. And it's just, I'm back actually very touched for you, right? Because as you mentioned, you are in real estate, and then you are, because of your clients and because of, you care about people just graduated and looking for a job,
Yes.
right? So thanks so much for actually putting this together. Maybe it would be helpful for me to first share about a little bit about myself, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So, yeah, people can understand, the perspective that I bring, and they can take my advice with a grain of salt.
Absolutely want to take your advice today. That's all the purpose about. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. So I actually grew up in China, and I came to the States for graduate school about 16 years ago. And as Annie said, right, I actually got my bachelor degree from Peking University, got my master degree in economics from Yale. But even with an Ivy League, degree, it was not easy for me 16 years ago to find my first job. I will touch a little bit more about that experience, but I have to say that I learned the hard way. It's like really devastating and defeated, right? But in the end, I did get a job, right? So my first job is with an economic consulting firm in Washington, D.C. So I spent a year over there, and I realized that I love it, but it's not like, the job that I felt really passionate about. I mean, I got good salary and learned a lot, right, from the people that I work with. So was thinking, everybody is working on Wall Street. I wanted to work on Wall Street as well. So while I was working, I was trying to figure out how to get to Wall Street. And it took me almost 4 years, right, to navigate, make people, right, connect with people and etc. and landed my first job on Wall Street. So I started working at Barclays Global Investment Bank in sales and trading. But then I created different roles for myself and created a new group called Digital Strategy, where we focus on working with the largest technology firm and also investing in fintech. And that really broadened the horizon for me. And then through this journey, as I mentioned, because I learned about career and finding job the hard way, I actually really started to building the toolkits. And then very slowly, I actually came up with a methodology, right, that really worked. So about 8 years ago, I co-founded a company with 2 other people in New York. And then we now moved the franchise back to China. And the company raised almost $500 million, became the largest career development platform in China.
Wow.
And collectively, we helped over 2 million people find jobs, right? And I personally helped at least thousands of people finding their job, pivoting their career, or getting promoted within their organizations. So people relate to me as a career guru. And what I think is really just come from my own experience, right? Because you suffered so much, so you started to, gather those information, really think about career growth. So last year, I left Barclays. I chose to resign and started my own executive coaching company, and also work in fintech, which is really dedicated to support people who are interested about fintech and wanted to land a job there.
That's really, incredible. So I'm sorry, this how do I do like this way? So you don't talk to yourself on the screen. Yeah. So I was really impressed, not just your educational background, and also this work experience, also for you to can leave one, high executive position in a big corporation and to form, and to pick up wherever you have and form another company and help more people, from helping the corporation to help the millions of people. I think that's really incredible. And so then we were jump right in to, I'm going to just pretend I'm really just a new new graduate, and so I'm going to ask really basic question. I guess a lot of I'm asking the question on behalf of other newly graduate. So so I want to 1 second. So they me put them to the side. My apology for this. Haven't been in a Zoom for a while. I was totally Zoom out during COVID. You know, we do the Zoom every day.
Yeah.
For people. Okay, this is the way. So and let me start the first question. So I know that because a lot of people, giving you education, you know, you grade you grade from Beida. And that's probably really the top university that you could hover in China, and then Yale, right? It's then you mentioned you have a tough time to get a job, and so, and I know you were patient throughout conversation. So how did you land your first interview?
Yes, it actually took almost the entire year for me to get my first interview. And I think for maybe a lot of people who are listening to this call, either they already have internship or they have thought about career. For me, it's actually very different. I never had any internship in my life. You know, when I was in school, I was more focusing on, you know, getting to the graduate degrees, right? Or thinking about what the future looked like, but I never actually worked internship, right? To figure out what I want. So my first real interview is the interview I got my first full-time job. So that was the only interview I got, and that I turned that into like a job offer. So the reason I said it's hard, right, is number one is at that time when I just graduated from Yale, I didn't really know what I want. I think, you know, I was looking at what other people think is good, right? So I started economics, and then most of people work on Wall Street. So I thought, oh, that sounds pretty cool, right? You make a lot of money, right? It sounds pretty flashy. So I was like, I wanted to work there, but I didn't really know what investment bank do, right? So I just, you know, submit a resume, or I tell people, hey, if you know a job, tell them I'm looking for a job, without really knowing what I want and what the job does. And of course, I don't hear from anyone. I probably send out at least 100 plus resumes. And I never heard from any of that, right? And then as a result, I don't have a, you know, interview. So what happened is I was very defeated, right? It really hurt my ego and confidence because I had thought I'm pretty good. But then as I'm not listening or getting, you know, heard back from any of the resume that I submitted, I was very, very defeated. So I attended a networking event where one of my alumni was there presenting. So she works at Morgan Stanley. And then she talks about, you know, how the recruiting process for Morgan Stanley. And I told myself, you know, there's no way I can get to Morgan Stanley. I don't know why, but I just don't believe I will get into.
You don't believe yourself at
Yeah. So I asked her, I said, where did you work before you get to Morgan Stanley? So she mentioned the firm's name, which actually is the firm that I end up joining. So I asked her, you know, is there any job opening? So I checked the website of the firm, and I noticed there are some job openings. So I sent an email to her. I said, can you recommend me to these jobs? And it's like an antitrust job. I don't even know what that means. She was like, are you interested in antitrust? I said, I don't even know what it is, right? But because I'm so desperate, I thought whatever job would be great. So she ended up, you know, taking really responsibilities and then connect me with someone at the firm. So I talked to her, and then there was an opening in Washington, D.C., and they asked me if I'm interested in just having an interview. So I said, sure. So I just went to DC for the interview. And then that turned out to be, I managed to get it to my first full-time job.
And then I remember you mentioned that afterward, that was your one and only job
One and
interview.
only, yes.
And actually from your sharing, I actually just jot down some notes, including that you didn't know what you want, and you didn't have understanding about the corporation and the job, what it's about, and you did not have the confidence. And at the time, of course, not now. And you take one job randomly without knowing what it is. And so we're going to dive back to this question later. And so based on that, how would you recommend that young people, the newly graduate, I'm sure there were so many like graduates this year, especially the past couple of years, but I think we all improve in economy, like how to land their first interview. How do they prepare?
Definitely. I think, now with almost 20 years of working experience and also worked as a coach, right, to help so many people getting jobs and etc. I've seen so many people on their career path, right? So I can say with hindsight, I really think for any fresh graduate, there are three things people need to pay attention. So the first one, it sounded like cliche, it's like their parents will probably say, is you wanted to really invest in yourself. And I can't be emphasized, more about that point. What I meant is you want to really find out what you like, what you enjoy, what you're passionate about, and then what's your value and what's your purpose in life. So some of those questions may sound a little bit big, right? And then
it is
will be like,
young people.
How can I know that, right?
Yes.
But the more you look into it, the more you will get the answers gradually. But what I find is some common mistakes people make is they don't really know what they want. So they end up getting a job, right? And then they work perfectly fine for 5 years, 6 years. And when they reach 30 or 40, they're like almost reach a plateau and they have to start over, right? Versus someone who tried some of the hard ways, right? Figuring out what they really want. And they started building the roadblocks. And then you see their career really has the longevity. So I use this quote almost, it's like sharpen the sword, right? Like it sounded like it's a waste of time right now because it's very urgent to find a job. But sharpen the sword will actually buy you way more time further down the line. So you have a career with longevity and the purpose and fulfillment rather than it's just a job and with a paycheck. So I think that's number one, is really to invest in yourself and truly understand who you are and what you want and etc. And I think the second one is you also wanted to survey the market, meaning you wanted to see what's out there, right? Like, for example, like, Annie, you're in real estate, right? When you go buy a house, you have to look at what's out there, right? You have to look at these houses and to think of, oh, is that the house that fits my budget? Is that the house that I like, the locations and all that? And the same way with jobs, right? Right now, I think it's very different than when we started look for jobs 15 and 20 years ago, because at that time it was more closed, right? Now you have internet, you have Google, you have, YouTube, you have Facebook. There's a lot more information out there. So I think, it's a waste if you don't leverage the information to your advantage. So you can really research, right, the industry, the company, the roles, right? You can even survey people from LinkedIn, like what it's like to be a salesperson, what it's like to be a trader, right? So I definitely encourage everybody to, casting a wider nest, right? And then attend events like this. So you can pick on, learn from other people's experience, but more just like your goal is to survey the market. So you know what's out there and you understand the difference between different roles. So you don't come in, right, like what I did, not even knowing what it is, right? So you have a very clear purpose. And I think the third one is we keep saying about networking, right? It started to become white noise, right? People are like, I don't know how to network. But I think one of the myth a lot of young people don't understand is when they are either look for jobs, right, or look for referrals, they are a little bit of hesitant to talk to people in charge. And I think that will probably be one of the biggest mistakes I notice people have done in their career, because right, if Annie is a CEO of a company, right, or if John is a CEO or the senior person at a company, they actually have much more access to job opportunities. There's a lot more say to say, hey, do we want to hire someone or provide some more overarching theme of where the company or the industry is going. What I find is a lot of students or fresh graduate like to mingle with other fresh graduate and students, right? So you see that when they talk to people from, say, a bank or a technology company, they like to talk to someone who just joined, right? They say, hey, can you recommend me, or all that. But what they don't understand is the impact of a junior person at the organization is way less than a more senior person. And sometimes I think the hesitation is that, oh, I'm just a fresh graduate and that person is a CEO. I have nothing to talk to the person of, I don't want it to bother them. But the reality is, as a senior person in the organization, most of them really want to help young people. And they wanted to give advice. They wanted to, help you connect. And even if they say yes, you have nothing to lose, right? But if they say no, you have nothing to lose. But if they say yes, it's much easier for you to get a job opportunities than through some other channels or apply your resume online. So I do encourage everyone to, just be yourself and think of networking with people who have influence or people who are more senior up in the organization. And then that will actually really help you to get your first interview.
That is so spot on. I can totally understand that, why your light, L-I-Y-T.
Yep.
Right. Actually, you could explain a little bit about that meaning, because I do a little bit of research. So you invest itself, right? The value and the purpose and what you like, and then so therefore you can accumulate your experience and create longevity in career path and survey the market like a real estate. Set your criteria and then understand certain collect information and talk to people in charge, which is really true. It's a very smart way. I can also just picture why when you talk to, if you were able to network and then connect with people, connect up with people who is higher, more senior level, is effective. Through the barbecue. Then we get to know the CEO of the company, and the immediate, put aside, I have these kids really smart from NYU and looking for intern, and boom, there you go. A couple of days later, the CEO told me that they offer him an intern. So that is really the power of you connect and so a network. And then so I think it does take courage. I wish back then we had this kind of technology, such as Zoom or whatever, easy for everybody to share, So I think that today everybody it's so much easier to create opportunity and to connect or look up somebody on LinkedIn or to, even myself, we have an agent who just said that contact the TV host directly. Like, I saw your show, I really enjoy it. I'm willing to offer my service and be your assistant and learn. And I said, who would think about just call up the TV host, right? It takes some guts. And then there goes, she got it. So I definitely vouch for that have the courage and talk to people in charge. Yeah. Definitely, yeah. And so that's to prepare, and then the first interview. So pretty much then those are prepare yourself. And in terms of the is any special technique or ways to the more effective to get the interview opportunity besides the networking, or just through the traditional kind of blind, just send out hundreds of resumes, and or what would be the more effective way?
Yeah, I think, from a technique perspective, right, I would highly recommend people leverage LinkedIn. And the reason I mentioned LinkedIn is what you notice is over the years, right? Even for companies, when they are recruiting, they started to rely on LinkedIn a lot, right? Rather than recruiters, because recruiter costs a lot of money, and then LinkedIn is free, right? So what you notice is there's a lot of job opportunities got posted on LinkedIn through the jobs section. But there's also a lot of job opportunities got posted by the hiring manager directly. That being said, right, if you go to LinkedIn and just search hiring, just the word hiring, it will pop up a lot of posts posted by the hiring manager, right? And then you can talk to the person directly. That's what I refer to as talk to the person in charge, right? Because if the person is hiring, and they are desperate to ask for, good talents and stuff, it's easier for you to just connect and say, hey, I saw this post on LinkedIn. I'm very interested. Can we have a quick conversation or something like that? So I do think a lot of people don't know this function or such information exist, which they actually missed a lot of opportunities. I never submitted a resume directly to HR. The reason is, as I said, right, when I first graduated, I submitted 100 resumes and never heard back. So it's really not a numbers game, right? It's not like, you keep going, submit 100 resumes, you will get something. What you realize is a lot of the application online is sort of like you're throwing a stone in the ocean. It's too many, right? Just technically, people don't have time to read through all of that. So, and the belief from a hiring manager's perspective is if you're someone with a good intention, you will figure out how to find us eventually, right? So I do think even though with the application online, with all that, don't get fooled, right? Because majority of the position got filled still through word of mouth and referrals and stuff. So you should definitely submit your resume online, but you also need to follow up. You also need to figure out a way, right, to get connected to the hiring managers or people in charge so you can get more like advantage, just getting noticed.
Yeah. So in terms of LinkedIn, and there were so many people, right? So what do you think a resume being really creative on your resume or standard, does it matter?
Let me put it this way, right? I keep referring back to the real estate, right? So as a real estate agent, when you sell houses, I'm sure you have a brochure, right? You have a website, but how many people really buy the house purely based on that? Right? Most people have to come and tour the house. Why?
Right.
Because they don't believe the brochure or they felt like it's too good or whatever. So I think that's the same with the resume, right? I think, people like to, you have to sort of have a resume, but I can tell you, I
make it colorful.
Yeah, I have been recruiting for Barclays and other organizations for more than 15 years. The time I spend looking on a resume is probably, 5 seconds. Just glance through and done. You rarely even spend a lot of time reading the resume in the first place. And also, I think looking for jobs.
Can I stop you for right there?
Yeah.
So then you receive a lot of resume, and the time you spend on a resume like 5 seconds. What kind of resume would grab your attention and stop and really read the person?
Yeah, I think I will, before I address that, right, I wanted to talk a little bit of mindset, right? So you understand why people make decisions like that. I think as a hiring manager, right, my job is I wanted to find someone who I can trust, who I know can do the job, who I like, and who I know has the potential to grow. So it's really like those things, like whether the person can do the job, is the person smart or whatever enough to get trained, right, to continue to grow, and then do I like the person, and do I trust the person? So as I was looking through all the resumes, I basically trying to find evidence that can support all these good points. So usually for fresh graduate, right, you will look at the school first, right? Why? Because the school shows credibility. If you get to Yale or Harvard, then I probably have a high likelihood to believe that you're smart, right? You hardworking and all that. And I could be wrong, but that's you just because I don't know you. So I have to judge you based on your credentials, right? So the first thing people probably look at it is school. And then they will look at your major, your GPA, and maybe some of the course you take. And the third one is they will look at some relevant experience. Relevant meaning if I work in investment bank, right, I wanted to look, do you understand stocks, right? Have you had some experience, either is running some like competitions, right? Or like investment thesis. If say you work at McDonald's, I probably wouldn't care that much, right? Even though it could be a very valuable experience, but I don't think it's that relevant, right? So I think from a graduate perspective, right? Oh, and the fourth thing I will look is any potential red flags, right? So if your resume is formatted very flashy, and if you're applying for investment bank, I'll be like, the person might not be that mature, right? So I think using from that lens for graduate, what you need to pay attention is first you need to understand, put yourself in the hiring manager's shoes, right? And ask yourself, like, what is the ideal candidates? What are some of the information that's really important for me? And the way to get that is actually quite easy because every company posts job description. You have to really, really, really study the job description. What are some of the keywords they use? What are some of the quality they're looking for? What are some of the basic skills they're looking for? And you wanted to make sure that your resume can hit most of the things mentioned on job description. That's, builds your credibility, shows the relevancy. And also another thing is you wanted to minimize the red flags, right? You don't want it to so stand out and it becomes a negative trait. Sometimes playing a little bit safe and conservative on resumes makes sense because you don't know what the other person is and you don't want it to have the red flags. You'd rather be sort of like, just be relevant. So I think those will be some of the actual tips for resume and also your social profiles.
Well, that's really, really helpful because I ask questions in such a technical level, just like I mentioned, pretending I'm just fresh out of school. And actually, I'm asking all these questions because I don't think way back then when I graduated, that way back then, a long time ago, we have this kind of advice, career advice. So then we dive into all this. Right now, we're just still like looking for a job, that first opportunity. And I believe that with your such a valuable, guidance, then I kind of feel like very confident already. I can get then my first interview. So now, if a person get an interview, now here comes really important. What should I prepare for their interview? I think that's so crucial, right? Like I remember back then when I graduated from my MBA, and then people told me that you need to get a $800 suit from Bruce Brothers between about 1990s if you want to go for interview in investment bank. And I truly remember that advice. So so what would you recommend? How would you advise them to prepare for that interview?
Gotcha. That's a really good question. I think, as I mentioned, right, what people looking for is, can you do the job, right? And then can you be trained? Do I like you? And also, do I trust you, right? So I think what's really, really important is you got to understand, even though interview takes days, right? Some interviews take days, take hours, it takes a long time. But the decision usually was made within the first 30 seconds.
I believe that, yeah.
Yeah. That being said, is as a human being, right? We send the energies, right? The way we present ourselves form the first impression. And it's very hard for people as humans, right, to change that first expression because we are self-fulfilling, right? We're constantly pulling, kind of characteristics, right, to confirm our first impression. So what you're really playing for is how can you establish those 4 things in the first 30 seconds, roughly, right? So from that perspective, I think, again, the number 1 thing is it's hard to believe, right? But it's really being yourself. And the reason I said that is a lot of people think they have to pretend to be someone else or fake it on a job interview. It may work, right? You may get a job, but I can guarantee that you will suffer for the rest of your duration at that company because you can't be yourself, right? You have to pretend to be someone else. So I think to be yourself is really important in the sense that, and it's also like it's a two-way street, right? We always felt like when we go for an interview, some other people are assessing us, but it's actually a two-way street. You're also assessing the company, wanting to see if that's a good environment that you wanting to work in. So bring your true self to a certain extent also help to test, right? To see if this is the environment that you will thrive and you will enjoy working with the people over there. But the second one is you always wanted to tell your experience in a story. The reason I can't emphasize enough about story is as human beings, right? We do not remember facts, but we remember how people make us feel. And that feeling comes from stories. If you remember in the beginning, right, when I tell my experience, I didn't say my titles, I didn't say my credentials. I said I grew up in China and I came here and I went to the school and I didn't got a job and I learned it the hard way and all that. So as a recipient of the story, you have already make some perceptions about me, right?
I do have to vouch that what you say on the story, because I think in our first time in a chit chat in a barbecue event, by the way, that was when you said it entire year you did not get a interview opportunity, and then also at the time when I listened to you, I was like, wow. And then like you say afterward, let's say, and give me your credential, so that was a story. It stuck in my mind, and then like, wow, she's incredible in the afterward and everything. So yeah, so I'm gonna throw back to you to continue.
Definitely. So that's the power of story, right? Because people remember you in the setting of the story. So they can see, oh, you are John, very different than all the other resume that I received. But what you notice is what's important in the story is you wanted to tell people, or at least to communicate who you are, but more importantly, why you're doing something, right? So for a lot of people doing interviews, right, they go to a company and just say, oh, I graduated from Harvard, I had my GPA, I'm doing this and that. But they didn't communicate why I wanted to work at Google, why I wanted to work at Goldman, why I wanted to work in the real estate company, right? So I think maybe an easy thing for a lot of graduates to do is to even think deeper within yourself. Why do you want to work here? And then communicate that when you introduce yourself. So the other people feel like, this person is very interested and has demonstrated something to show the interest and the engagement. And that will make you more stand out and stick right in the interviewer's mind. And another thing is, as you're talking about your story, right, you also wanted to have a very clear intent. So the intent is a way, sometimes it's for a lot of people, it's hard to describe who you are, right? When I say, hey, tell me about yourself, you see a lot of students just go on and on and on, right? Talk about their lab work, their course, their experience and all that. So it's the result is it will lose focus, right? So you remember if you are with someone and you talk for an hour, you don't remember what they say actually, right? It's kind of you already lost. So as a speaker, as a person who communicate your background, I always tell my students is you need to remember your core 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is also come from self-discovery, right? And then, as I said earlier, investing in understanding yourself. So you wanted to summarize your strength in 4 words. Who you are, 4 words. Am I smart, quick learner, good with pressure, right? Or resilience, and forward thinking. Maybe those are the 4 things you think are either both relevant to the job and also kind of can really describe who you are. Then when you communicate your stories, communicate your experience, you wanted to make sure all that things can focus on those 4 points. So as a result, right, after the interview, the interviewer will say, I remember that girl. She's like a quick learner, right? Or she's forward looking. So they are started to associate you with those 4 words intentionally. Then they will remember you, right? And then they will associate you with those. So I find that's a really effective way of, communicating who you are, what you do, your experience. If you know those are the 4 words, you keep repeating them and tie your, experience to show evidence of those 4 things. It will always stick.
This is incredible. I mean, I have learned so much so far, even though I'm not looking for a job.
Yeah, because the same goes for you getting clients and, selling houses.
Yeah, I feel I can go out again to look for a job, totally. And the forward, seriously, I think I would tell my new agents when they come in, I said, I want you to close your eyes and calm down and think about what would you like people to remember you. And the quality, right? And I said, I know when people think about Ann Chen, would be Ann is honest, integrity, she's fun, she's passionate, and those is the quality of me, and people think about. I think that is so smart, that is so clever, that summarize your strengths in 4 words. Wow, it is so incredible. So actually, I'm going to send this video back to the blue college, the career, the job, because it's so incredible. And so then this time, right, that was a prepare, right? Because as you talk, I also may know, like, being yourself, true self, that's important. But if we have more time, I'm going to come back later because I want to finish the question. So being executive in the corporation, when you interview, and those are how I prepare. But I can prepare myself. But usually, what type of question? I know that a lot of time decision will, whether you like somebody will kind of make in the first few seconds. I know it's kind of first impression. I myself also like kind of visual, very quick in a way. But what is the interview process like? And then if there's any protocol or process or like some basic, fundamental question or quality you look for in the person. I know that you already talk about some that you want to see the person, whether, kind of experience, whether you can trust, and the potential of whether you like, but any questions that it can be prepared.
Yeah, I think a couple of things just in general, right? If you think about, you can envision there's 1,000 people apply for a job that hires 1 person, right? So you can see that the hiring manager's job is pretty tough, right? Because I have to find 1 person from this 1,000 people. Like, how can I make sure what I hired is the right person? Because the cost for an organization to hire a wrong person is really, really big, right? So what they wanted to do is, I don't want to hire the best person, but I wanted to hire a person with high certainty. So always remember that, right? It's like you don't need to be the best to be hired into a position, but you wanted to give them a lot of safety and certainty so they know you're not a wrong person. The reason I said it is especially for junior positions, right? What we usually call entry levels. I don't really expect you can do a lot of things, to be honest, right? So I need you to be smart and be quick learner so you can learn and grow. But, if you're not reliable, or if you cannot, be a really good, entry-level analyst or something to support me, my life will be miserable, right? So for people who are looking for entry levels, they primarily look for people who are reliable. So from that perspective, right, when you think of the whole interview process, I started with resume screening. That's mainly just because there are so many people, right? I have to get rid of some so I can focus. And then that's where I said, your resume hit some of those keywords is really important, because as a, interviewer, I will look for those things. And if people don't have those, I will, just filter them out. So if you get in, right, for the interview, right, then we talked about, how to present yourselves and all that. But as an interviewer, the first thing most of the people will ask is, tell me about yourself, or walk me through your resume. The reason is, as I said, they don't have a chance to really look at your resume, right? So they don't really know who you are. So, and they don't want it to come up with some questions, right? So they usually just, give the hard job to you to be like, hey, tell me about yourself, which also give you an opportunity, right, to use some of the technique we just talked about, right, to craft your own story. But that's usually the first question. And then usually if you're interviewing for technical roles, there will be technical questions, right? There's nothing more to say about that. If you get all the questions correct, you got the job. If you don't, you don't, right? But another part is what we usually call behavior interview, meaning the person is not really testing you about Python coding or knowledge, right? They're more testing about who you are. And that's really designed to test if you're reliable, right? Because the biggest thing like a hiring manager don't want, right, especially from a junior person, is if I wanted you to do something and you tell me, oh, I don't know what to do, or oh, I'm sick, I can't do it, right? Or like I need to have a vacation, I can't finish what you gave to me. That would be the biggest red flags for anybody who wanted to hire the role. So they ask you a lot of questions, right, trying to get the red flags.
I want to pitch in one very quick story to that. You talk about reliable. I remember, and we talk about it, my very young self way back when I went for Goldman to interview a data analyst. I think it's a very simple job. The headhunter told me, particularly, and do not mention you want to be a banker. And sure enough, the person asked me, what do you see yourself, And I said, I want to be a banker. It just flew out. But then as soon as I got out of the interview, the headhunter, the phone came, like he literally yelled at me. And I think that I can now understand what you meant about being a junior position, like being reliable and a high certainty. Yeah. So it's this is so great. I'm sorry, get back to you. Sorry to interrupt you.
Definitely. And I think, so some of the question they will ask is what are your strengths, right? What are your weaknesses? And, how do you handle a high pressure position, right? And then how do you solve team conflicts and all that? So, the way to answer those questions is also tied back to what we talked about, your core essence, 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? Because if you can craft some stories that, always coming up with those, that will help you answer those questions. But I wanted to more just explain why people are asking those questions, so you can prepare from the why rather than from the specific questions.
Thank you. That's really, I enjoy everything. So high certainty and being reliable, that's great. So what about those are in the process and question, what about the appearance?
I think again, right, back to the philosophy, right, is interview is not really for you to, unless you're interview for like an actor, right? Otherwise, you're not really trying to stand out from your appearance. The reason is you don't know what the other person's preference is, and you know they are always looking for red flags because they don't know whether you're reliable. So they have to find evidence to, prove that you are reliable. So any red flags will become a big thing. They'd rather to let you go or not having you rather than hire you with this potential risk, right? Of like a, kind of potential risk in the future. So from that perspective, I think the rule of the thumb is you wanting to dress like the people who work in the company and maybe with one notch up. Meaning that because people understand, right? You come for an interview, you're not come for a business meeting. So if you notice, for example, if you go work for Google, right? You notice that people just wear t-shirt and shorts. You might not want it to show up for interview with t-shirt and shorts, right? You might want it to have like a shirt with pants, but you don't want it to maybe overdress, right? To be like, okay, I will wear
a banker
heels,
style,
right? Like a banker. Then people will be like, ooh, this person is very serious, right? And then if you go to a bank, you notice people wear shirts and tie and pants. You might want to bring a jacket as well, right? Just so you can be a little bit formal, because people can understand you want it to be formal because it's an interview, right? But you also don't want it to be like too formal, so you're viewed as you don't really understand the culture of the company. So I think that's one, is you wanted to make them feel you are part of them, but also show them respect by a little bit formal. And another thing is, again, back to the theme of minimizing red flags, right? For women, you don't want it to wear a lot of jewelries, right? Because it's really distracting. And then some people might be triggered by your appearance, right? So they started to associate you with certain words you don't want them to associate, right? So that's why you wanted to play a little bit conservative and safe to just keep it, clean, right? Minimize the makeup, very professional. Don't wear a lot of fancy jewelries, right? I saw people, wear like really big earrings to like a banking interview. There's nothing wrong with wearing an earring, right? First of all, but again, back to the reliability, right? It's like, do I feel comfortable to present you in front of a client? That's a question you can ask yourself, right? Usually you want it to dress to be presentable in front of a client, right? If you're dressing like that, if I'm recruiting for investment bank, I will be like, this person is great, but she might not be presentable in front of a client. So that will be a red flag, right? So usually there's no real rules. You definitely don't need to buy a $800 suit, but I think you just need to pay attention, right?
Mm-hmm.
Are you more like them, and are you presentable in front of a client?
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm going to ask this question, and it's kind of like very basic and silly or stupid in a way, but I think it's important. So here I am in the interview in the conference room waiting for my very key person, or people to come in. When they come in, do I stand up? How do I react?
I usually
do I shake their hand?
Yeah, I usually tell my students, right, is interview starts the day before your interview. And, you should approach interview as not an interview. It's like the first day of your job.
Oh.
Yeah, and the reason I said that is why interview starts the day before the interview, right? It's just help you get ready with the mentalities, right, and the energies and all that, right? So you wanted to over prepared in the sense that, okay, the day before I'm already in that mode. So it's natural for you to show up for interview. And the reason I said you wanted to approach any interview as your first day on the job is also two things, right? One is you already got the job, right? So you don't need to be very, stressed or nervous about it. But two, it helps you answer the question you just asked, right? If it's the first day of your job, right, and your boss walks in, what would you do? You may still, stand up, right? Or like, shake their hands or ask them, hey, what's going on, right? What was the weekend and all that, right? So it's more ease. The reason ease is really important, right? As I said, out of the 4 things interviewers are looking for, one of it is, do I like you?
Yeah.
How do I know I like you? It's comfortable to be around you, right? If I feel very awkward to be around you, then I can't like you because it's very awkward. So when you put your mindset as like, oh, this is the first day of my job, then you're kind of just general. Like, how do you talk with your friends, right? You ask them what they do, what was the weekend. One of the small, tiny tips that I personally use, and I teach a lot of people, it worked like a charm, is you always wanted to be the one to break the ice, right? Because you make the other person more comfortable. So the easiest way you could do is to ask about their weekends. And if your interview is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, you can ask them, hey, what did you do last weekend, right? How was last weekend, right? And usually people will be like, oh, I went to a game or do something. And you started to open up, right? And then both people become less, kind of stressed or nervous. And if you interview for Thursday and Friday, you can say, do you have any plans next weekend, right? Or something like that when you leave. So you can just remember, okay, I can talk about the weekend, right? Or talk about something. So depends on what the days your interview goes. That's just a de-stressor for you and the interviewer. So it's easier to bond, right? Very immediately.
So it doesn't necessarily need to be like be really serious in the whole process. Could be a little bit chit chat, just being a normal human, like being a friend.
So the more relaxed you are, to be honest, the easier the other person feel comfortable, because you have to understand, right? Like if I'm an interviewer, I'm also, I wouldn't say nervous, right? But I don't want to spend an hour with someone that's that serious and it kind of like, it's a drain on my end, right? So I wanted to have fun as well.
Does color matter?
Does what? Color?
Color, like color your
like
I say the red jacket, like I love your but
yeah.
you're executive, like so what about the interview? Because I remember a lot of the time that when we first graduate from school, it's almost a common that it's either navy blue or gray or black. Should we wear something like more?
So first of all, I don't think it matters that much, except for if you're working in a more creative companies, right? If you are working in a like news agent or whatever, they may have different requirements. But generally, I think for corporate America, I would say the junior your position is, the safer you want it to be, the more conservative, right? So if you're interviewing for a junior position, black, gray, blue, white, anything that's not really flashy, I definitely will not recommend wearing, right, for a junior position. The senior you are, the more you wanted to really have your own signature and your brand. I wear colorful jackets all the time, right? So that's actually really interesting, because on the trading floor, you always see the one who wear the most complete suit is always intern, because no one else wears something like that.
That is really good insight. Thank you so much. And so I have so many questions because I'm so curious about it, since I learn so much. So what about those looking to change a career? Because I'm sure if I follow everything, I can really get easy to get a job. I feel I'm already stepping into the. What about these two questions? The following two questions kind of like related, because a lot of people, like back to where you mentioned in the beginning, they just then jobs randomly don't know what they're doing, and then just continue on, and later on some point in life is realize I don't really want to do this. I really want to, when they grow more mature, and then they realize what I like, my purpose or my value, and then they want to change a career, and which is actually happened to majority of people, I would believe so. And a lot of people do really do it temporary. So would you recommend people to just take on a job like temporary, or just say hold down there, continue looking, or people want to change a career? Like I'm kind of blending the two questions together,
Yeah,
but you know what I mean?
I think it's a really good question, right? I think go back to my original point, right? Is you wanted to spend a lot more time than you want to really figure out what you want, right? The reason I said is that's the easiest path for you to get what you want, right? Because if you don't know what you want, I can guarantee you don't get what you want because you just don't have a target. And I think the metaphor I will use is like travel, right? If I know I'm going to San Francisco, and if I don't have money to buy the air tickets, that's fine. I can take a bus or I can even walk, right? And then I can, when I have money, I can take a car or whatever it is. So that's usually when we say you get a temporary job where you get the first job you don't really like, but it's in service of something. Because you know your bigger goal is I wanted to go to San Francisco. So it's okay for me to do this temporarily to either make money or saving or get the experience, whatever it is, in order to service me to go somewhere else. I think the danger comes from you get a temporary job, but you don't really know where you're going, right? So for example, I don't know whether I'm going to San Francisco or going to Boston or going to DC. And I'm like, you know what? I just bored. So just take a random car, just go wherever it is. I mean, you may end up somewhere if that's what you like later on, but you might also go to the different direction, right? To maybe where you ultimately wanted to get to. So that's where we actually have a lot of people come to see us when they're 30, 40, because they're lost. Like after 10 years, 15 years of collecting paycheck, they realize that something is missing in their life and in their career, and they don't know where they should go and they need to start over. There's nothing wrong to start over or even pivoting your career, right? But the sooner you can figure it out, the sooner you can make sure every action you take is in line of your bigger goal. And sometimes, you know, you may need to take a step back in order to take a step forward. And that's totally okay, as long as you know why you're doing it and what's it in service of. So I think to touch on the question about people changing career, right? I think, you know, a couple of things you still need to figure out, right? I think the number one is what you want, right? I think that's always the number one question. And number two is what can you do to leverage what you already have? I think sometimes people don't give full appreciation of what they already have, right? The grass is always greener on the other side. So we always felt like, oh, there's something better out there, and forget to really recognize and appreciate what they already have. And a lot of people, after they look at what they already have, they may realize that that's good enough for them. They may not want to pivot or something. So it gives you a different perspective, right? But I think, and the third one is really just to acquire skills based on what you already have, right? So for example, when I started coaching, I wasn't, you know, leaving my job immediately to do coaching. I've done a lot of things while I'm still employed to figure out. And when I figure out this is the direction I wanted to go, I decided to resign. But it wasn't like all of a sudden I wanted to do coaching. I just jumped right in and without even know what it is, right? So I think there's a lot of things you can do while you're still at this current job to prepare for the next one.
Wow, thank you. And so hopefully that is not on a complete different direction. Let's say today I'm in finance, and next and then someday I realize I want to be an engineer. Then now I have to put myself back to school, right? So and then as the last the next two questions was very, very key. So with all the experience that you have now and all the valuable insight, you know, what advice that you would give to your like younger self when looking for a job now that with who you are, what you have, and looking back?
Yeah, I think very consistent, right, with what I said earlier. And
Yeah.
that's also a technique I mentioned about always go back to your core so people can remember, right? I think number one is really invest in yourself. Right. I couldn't emphasize enough investing in yourself more in the sense of knowing who you are, knowing your strength, knowing your value, and knowing your purpose. I think those are lifelong journey, right? We continue to refine, but the sooner you start, the easier your life and career and your path is gonna be. And the second one is to really leverage the tools and the resources that you already have. Like we cannot become someone else overnight. And you know, one of my favorite quote is, someone else is already taken. So be yourself, right? You're the only person that's not taken in the whole world. So that means like you wanted to fully appreciate who you are, your resources, your skills, and trust that just from what you already have, you can get what you want, right? So if you know 2 people, go talk to these 2 people, right? If you know these 4 things, go try these 4 things, right? So eventually it will get where you wanted to go. And I think the third one I will always say is don't settle.
Don't settle.
Right. I think it's easier for a young person to say, oh, this is so hard. This is so tired. I just want to find a job and call it a day. Sure, you certainly can do it. But then you will probably spend another 4 years, 5 years to find another job, right? And 10 years to really build that career. So sometimes to invest some more time in the beginning to find a job that you really like, right? Or no, this is the path that you really wanted to be on. It's a good investment and it worth the effort. Because Warren Buffett always say the biggest asset for a young person is time, right? Like you're young, you have nothing to lose. All you have is time, right? So you use that time wisely to invest in yourself, to cultivate your career, to build your network. So when you are 40 years old, you have something to tap into, right? That's like the return on investment started with the investment, you know, when you're in your 20s.
Wow, that's yeah, time. And also so then in the beginning you talked about that your company has helped like over 2 million people, you know, that get a job. This is incredible. So with all this experience and seeing so many cases, what is the mistake that people often make when doing the job hunting or switching the career?
Yeah, I think the first one is they don't really do what we call self-work, right? They don't do work, understand themselves. They more figure out, you know, what Google wants, right? So I will get into Google, but you might not be happy at Google, right? So you have to understand what you need first.
Yeah.
And I think the second one is people don't believe they can get what they want. So they will get something alternative or they will try something seems easier, right? I certainly made that mistakes. I noticed a lot of people has a lot of potential, but was like, no, I don't think I'm qualified for that position. Let me try something else. And then in the end, probably someone else with less credential actually got the job they wanted, right? And they're like, oh, I wish I can be more courageous. So remember that you have nothing to lose, right? To go after the things you really like. So never settle and go after the things you really like. And I think the third thing is I noticed the mistakes that people make is they don't seek out help or support. Right. It sort of felt like, you know, I already graduated from college. I no longer need help, right? I have to figure this thing out myself. And you don't have to. And the truth is, even when you're 40, 50, 60, you still need help, right? You still need a support structure. And the relationship is built by asking each other for support and help, right? So I think, you know, don't feel hesitate to ask for help, to reach out to people, right? And ask for recommendations, ask for advice, ask for opportunities. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And so I kind of then through this 10 question, I can hear there's a repeat strong advice and back to like really fundamental, like what do you like? What do you need? What do you see yourself? And kind of build from there. And it's really, really important. It kind of remind me back to a quick story that back to in business school, the very last semester, I repeat this story so many times, but I think it's a great story. Our professor, marketing professor, he was in his, I think he was at time probably in his late 70s, but he was still teaching. And he said, I could have retired, but I'm here because I'm doing something I like. And that I teach you guys that marketing, I mean, it's not word by word, but 100% pretty much the same meaning. Like teach you marketing, but the most important is to how do you market to yourself in your life. And then 80% of people, majority of people spend about 80% of their lifetime at home and at work. And so what you should do for yourself, everybody is try to make at least one, at least one of the two places, at your home or your workplace, a happy place to go, right? And how can you be happy? Like you need to be lucky doing something you like, right? So that back to what Ying's talking about, what you like, what you need, your value, your purpose. So kind of in line and to develop from there. And it's so true. So very last question, is there anything that you like to share that I have not asked?
I think the only thing, I really like what you just shared, right? And I think the only thing I would say is, if you love what you do, you will never work for a day.
That's true.
Yeah, that really means like, a lot of people ask me how many hours you work. I'm like, I don't really see it as work, right? Because what I do right now is part of my life. I definitely carve out a lot of time for families and stuff, but I don't look at them as like, oh my God, I now have to go work. It's like, if you really love what you do, you don't have to work for one day. And I think that's usually how people get a lot of satisfaction and fulfillment from their career, because it's something they're doing, something they're truly passionate, and they're doing something that they feel a lot of stretch and growth. It doesn't mean you will always be happy, right? Because suffering, pain, grief, anger, sadness are all part of life, right? So I still experience all that, even though I'm doing something I love. But you know why they're there, because you have a purpose, and it will keep going, right? So I think, don't try to be happy, but try to be authentic to who you are. I think you will not regret, right, to come to the planet for the lifetime.
Yeah, that's really oftentimes sometimes I often have people sometimes call me or WeChat me from China or Canada, or people that ask me, and how come you look like happy every day all the time? But which is true, and simply because I'm really every day, even though I have to do a lot of different stuff, I'm just doing something I really enjoy. So I would say give yourself time to go for things you like. Like back to Yin said, don't settle. But the biggest ask what young people is at the time, right? So I'm going to wrap this up, and so this session is about giving you a really valuable insight to the young newly graduate. And what about what else? What kind of people can come to you like about your coaching and anything?
Sure. Yeah.
Service. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, they can certainly come to my website, right, or email me. I can drop the contact information in the chat. It's actually it's LIYT, stands for Living Your Truth Coaching, right? And then my email is the same, ying@liytcoaching.com. So we have coaches that work with people one-on-one, but also in a group setting. We also have like a coaching program called Pivoting Your Career, right? So that's tailored for both the fresh graduate and also people in the middle of their career wanting to transition to a different positions and etc. So come and talk to us. We're happy to just direct you to different directions, even you don't work with us yet.
Thank you. So, yeah, I think this is really valuable. So I'm going to really send it out besides the Facebook and then YouTube. I'm going to send out to the graduates and Brooke. Everybody can share. I think it's just really wonderful, about sharing what you have with other people who in need. And that's what this session is about. Like, I'm in real estate. What do you do here? I find a goal I want to share with everybody. So, okay, thank you so much, Ying. And I'm to let you go. And then we'll end the session. And I'm sure that whoever watch this will feel like I don't know, like more confidence and more like direction and guideline. It's really important. Like, thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, thank you. Okay, bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.